The Hunter Biden email story is not going away, despite Twitter completely banning links to it last week and Facebook doing their best to suppress it as well. But now the liberal media is finally talking about it, and they think they've gotten to the bottom of it.
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. But I guess at this point, we can't be shocked by anything this administration does, no matter how craven. But clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help in trying to amplify it.
A lot of Russian bots, a lot of bots online, targeting, doing the dirty work of Russia.
And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. All of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow.
They're looking into whether these unverified emails about Hunter Biden that were published earlier this week by the New York Post about his business dealings in Ukraine and China are part of this bigger Russian disinformation effort in the 2020 election.
You know, one way we could find out whether or not these emails are real would be to ask Joe Biden, who I'm sure got on the phone immediately after this story broke and asked his son Hunter if they're fake. Of course, that's the job of a journalist, but there aren't many of those around these days, and despite sitting down face-to-face with him for 90 minutes at his vice presidential town hall last week, ABC's George Stephanopoulos didn't bring it up once. But on Friday, CBS's Bo Erickson remembered what he learned in Journalism 101 and pulled out his cell phone on the tarmac at the airport and asked Joe Biden about it.
And Mr. Biden, what is your response to the New York Post story about your son, sir?
I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. Right up your alley. They're the questions you always ask.
I have no response, he said, and then followed up that it's a smear campaign. Of course, he didn't deny that the emails are real or that the laptop was Hunter's. He just has no comment. Fox News is reporting that one of the people in an alleged email thread has corroborated the veracity of the messages, which they say appear to outline a deal involving Joe Biden and a Chinese energy firm. Democrats are very upset that a lone journalist at night on the tarmac using his cell phone asked Joe Biden a real question. Check out some of the responses to the video after he posted it on his Twitter account. The story is a Russian disinformation campaign. Is he a little hot? Yep, and rightfully so. It deserves no airtime, says this guy. How dare a journalist ask a presidential candidate about one of the top stories in the country? This guy declares that the Russian disinformation campaign has already been debunked. A broken clock is right twice a day. The emails could be fake, but if they were, then you would think the Biden campaign and the liberal media industrial complex would have jumped on that right away instead of trying to ignore the story and hope it goes away. Democrats were glad the tech giants did their best to try to stop the information from spreading before realizing that it just resulted in the Streisand effect, meaning now even more people are curious about what the heck's going on. Here's Senator Chris Coons from Delaware.
Facebook and Twitter have policies to not spread things that are utterly unreliable, that have been debunked, and where their origin is untrustworthy. They're practicing their own internal controls, as I wish they had over the past 4 years. If they had been more selective about what they posted in 2016, don't take my word for it, listen to the head of the FBI. An active Russian disinformation campaign in 2016 had an influence on that election. They are trying even harder in this election. I'm glad that they are managing the content on their own websites.
Sorry, Senator, but if they didn't allow fake news to spread, then CNN would have been banned years ago. But as you know, over the last 4 years, the Democrats have been blaming the Russians for everything they don't like. In fact, CNN once claimed that it was Russian disinformation that Joe Biden got the Ukrainian prosecutor fired.
Breaking news, President Trump spreading Russian disinformation to try to discredit Joe Biden.
He has retweeted an account that put out a recording of a telephone call from 2016 between the former Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko, and former Vice President Joe Biden, which President Trump supporters say points to the fact that Vice President Biden got a Ukrainian prosecutor fired in order to help his son Hunter. Now, there's no evidence of any of that. of any of that.
Who are you going to believe, CNN or your lying eyes? Of course, we've all seen the video of Joe Biden admitting that he did exactly that, and I don't need to play it again. In fact, if you question Joe Biden's mental health, you may be a Russian bot spreading disinformation. Poor Brian Stelter believes that President Trump may have been working with the Russians for decades.
You talked about him being an unwitting Russian asset. Jonathan Tate, you went a step further in your cover story for New York Magazine this week. We could put it on screen, I think. You talked about whether President Trump has actually been a Russian asset for decades. Now, you acknowledge that this is unlikely, but you're making the point that it's possible. Talk us through it.
Well, what I was trying to do in this story is to make the case that
what you were trying to do is write more Hillary Clinton fan fiction because you're not a journalist. And things aren't going any better over at MSNBC.
Is Donald Trump's fixation with Putin about some material gain he thinks he can get from him? Or does he maybe see him as sort of a new Fred Trump?
Yes, he sees Vladimir Putin as a father figure. You've cracked the case, Joy.
The Russian bots.
Order up your Russian bots, okay? And you're off to the races.
Let's not forget that CNN also reported that the walkaway movement was just a bunch of Russian bots. Even though the Walkaway Campaign YouTube channel has countless video testimonials of people from across the entire country explaining why they're walking away from the Democrat Party. But speaking of people who have spread Russian disinformation, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey was found to have retweeted a known Kremlin-created account about a dozen times. Michael Moore also attended a protest outside of Trump Tower in New York City that was literally organized by Russian trolls on Facebook. And aromatherapist Eric Swalwell thinks that Tucker Carlson is a Russian agent.
You're peddling the narrative that the Trump administration is putting out, which also is the Putin narrative because they're retweeting this with their Russian bots. If you're on the same side as WikiLeaks and Putin,
I wonder, do you perceive
if you're on the same side as WikiLeaks and Putin, you should take a step back and wonder, whose bidding are you really doing?
I don't even know what to say. I don't want to explode on let so I'm just going to end this segment now. Let the record reflect
you accused me
of working for a hostile foreign government.
All this talk about Russian bots reminded me that I do sell this high-quality Russian bot t-shirt in my online store at markdice.com. So if you've been responsible for sharing pro-Trump information on social media, you may want to pick one up. Use the promo code RussianBot, one word, at the checkout to save 20% off of anything this whole week. Don't forget about my Halloween special Beware of Democrats shirt, but if you want to get it in time for Halloween, you may have to select rush shipping. So head on over to my online store at markdice.com or click the link in the description below, enter the promo code RussianBot, one word, at the checkout to save 20% and check them out.